Oh wait, it's forgive me, Jennifer, you're in charge, right? I was like, Juliana. Sorry.
I thought Jennifer was here.
I've gone back in time. It is a year ago. Jennifer, you're running the show.
Okay, well then I guess we will start this meeting for the historic enforcement policy and procedures update. I was not at the last meeting, so I apologize, but so I'll just introduce myself. Hi, I'm Jennifer McGlinty-Timbrook, and I was on the Historic Landmarks Commission for a while, and that's it.
Great. And Juliana, do you want to introduce yourself, and then we can just go around the virtual room?
Thank you. Yes, I'm Juliana Inman, and I live in the Court Chemeketa Residential Historic District.
Claudia, do you want to go?
Sure. I'm Claudia Howells. I live in Scan. I guess I was invited to join this group because I have quite a bit of zoning and land use background.
Great. Marianne?
Marianne Spradlin. I did live in Scan, and I just moved to Court Chemeketa.
Ah, great.
Another historic house.
Wonderful.
So, glad to be here.
Thanks for being here. And Steve?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Sorry I missed the last meeting as well, and I look forward to catching up. So I am on the Historic Landmark Commission for its first term and learning all about the processes and interested in being involved here.
Great, thank you, Steve. Kendra?
Hi, excuse me. I'm Kendra Mingo. I live in the Gaiety Hill historic neighborhood in Scan.
Great, thank you. Michael?
Michael Livingston. I'm the chair of the Candy Neighborhood Association, which includes the historic downtown area, a former resident of the Court Chemeketa Historic District. And I also participated in the advisory committee for the next 10-year plan for the Historic Landmark Commission. I'm glad to be here.
We're glad you're here. Thank you, Michael. So Susan, now we'll do city staff. So Suzanne.
Hi. I'm not sure I can show my picture today because my internet keeps going in and out. I am the compliance division manager, and I am here for all those things legal, I guess.
You keep us in line.
Yeah, keep you in line.
Thanks. Yeah. And Stephanie.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Weil. I'm the Code Compliance Officer, Zoning Inspector for Planning. I've worked on code compliance for about a decade. So I've worked a few historic cases with Kimberly. And I'm also keeping my video off for connection.
Great, thank you. I'm glad you're here. And Zach. You all know Zach.
I'm Zach. I am the admin analyst for, or one of the admin analysts for planning, and I work specifically with the historic cases, and I am helping to support staff, or I'm working as staff support for this meeting.
You help us run the program.
Yep.
Yes. All right, so I'm Kimberly Fitzgerald. I'm the Historic Preservation Program Manager. So I'm gonna share my screen, hopefully with power and everything, it'll all work fine and you can see it. I'm gonna, some of this, oh, whoops. Sorry, actually, I'll have to click the correct. Share button. Okay. Can y'all see that? Great. Okay, so just a little bit of background to catch you up and then bring us to where we are in the process. So as most of you know, because you're on the advisory committee, the Landmarks Commission had this as a goal in their work plan for this year. and it's to update our historic compliance and enforcement policies so that at the end of the year, what this work will do is we'll have updated goals and strategies that will then be provided to staff, and the Landmarks Commission will be notified what our updated processes and procedures are going to be. And so today, it's October. We've already had 2 meetings, and the previous meetings in June and August were really about collecting information and developing an initial draft of our goals and strategies. So today we're going to finalize those recommended policies and strategies. And we have one more meeting after this to just wrap everything up in December. On your screen really quick, these are our current policies and strategies. I'm not going to read all of them, but they're pretty simple, and they don't clearly identify the how to accomplish what our goals are in a way that we can easily manage. So that's really the purpose behind our meetings now, is to figure out achievable goals that we can actually implement, and really looking at developing partnerships with the neighborhood associations, which is why you're all here. And so what I really want to do today, and Zach had nicely sent this on to you guys last week, and I don't know if any of you have had time to take a look at it, but we'll go through it here. I'm hoping that we can have a discussion on some of these questions that I have here in purple. So we're just going to go through one goal at a time. And it would really be helpful also to identify priorities, because as you know, we're all busy, we want to hear back from you what's most important. So I have these in a list here, A, B, C, D, but they're not intentionally in any prioritization order. What I would like to be able to do under each goal is to end up with a list that has the most important thing at the top. So, and then I have questions here for discussion. So last time we brought up how we notify. I'm just going to start with the first question, and then after we've gone through this discussion, we'll talk about priorities. So last time we discussed how we currently notify property owners that their property is designated historic. And we currently, just to refresh your memory, or for those that weren't here last week, we use the city's lien system. So when a title company, when it goes through a real estate agent, the title company will typically reach out to the city, and we have a lien database. And what we've got is it's essentially a fake lien on the property. So it's not a true lien, but it generates a letter which basically notifies both the real estate agent and the property owner that the property is designated historic. But if it's a private sale, that doesn't happen. So we've had some slip through the cracks that way. So that's my first question. I'm wondering if anybody has any thoughts or ideas about additional ways to notify folks that their property is designated. I'm turning it back over to you, Jennifer, for you to facilitate discussion, or just.
I was watching the video. Wasn't there something else that got brought up besides the city lien process, like in the discussion? And
do you guys remember? I know that initially we had looked at working with the assessor's office, but there was a pretty high cost adding it to the deed.
Like Suzanne's hands raised or clapping.
It's supposed to be raised. I may have clapped. Yeah, the only thing that I could think of is the one that has the cost, Kimberly, where you actually have it on the deed and it passes down much like you would do if there was an easement or something on the property.
Yeah.
It's the only place they're always going to see it.
Okay. Does anyone else have any other ideas that don't cost anything? I mean, we can certainly identify it as a goal, and then we could look for grant money to fund it.
Are you talking specifically about how to reach out to purchasers of property? Is that what we're I don't want to get off.
Yeah. So one of the problems that we identified was that people don't always know that their property is designated historic before they start making changes. So wanting to be able to educate them right up front before they buy, ideally.
Well, I remember we did talk about also educating contractors. And that was something that I think was also a suggestion from Colorado.
Oh, right.
Yeah. I didn't want to get ahead though. I wasn't.
Yeah, that definitely, I think both. Okay, you're right. So engaging not just contractor, not just real estate agents, but also contractors just through education.
Right. And that also catches people who may have lived in a historic district for some time, but not have really done anything and may not be fully aware. I mean, the regulations in Salem are different, as an example, to regulations in Salem, Massachusetts.
Great.
I mean, we don't seem to care about the colors of paint. Other cities do, but people can get really confused about what's required of them and what's not. So that was just a thought about engaging that other group of people who, I guess, are involved in working on historic homes.
It's a good idea. Any other thoughts?
I just had a note from our last meeting. There was, and I don't know what this means, so I'll just say it out loud and then hopefully someone can fill in. But I made a note that there might be a way to add some kind of disclosure form for realtors. But I don't know what that means.
Right, yeah, and I think that's kind of what we were trying to figure out. So like if we did add it, work with the assessor's office, for example, properties that are on special assessment, which is that program, it's a tax incentive program through the State Historic Preservation Office. That's what they do. And there's a cost associated with that. And it does require the real estate agent to disclose. It's like Suzanne said, it runs with the land. And so that might be in terms of just the legal disclosure piece of it, in order to capture the ones that are falling through the cracks for those private sales. That might be the only way to be certain that they're notified. And I think that we would, from what I'm hearing, it sounds like it's not just one thing that we should do. It's multiple things. So there's the disclosure, but there's also the ongoing, education that we need to do at kind of every step. Contractors, real estate agents, and that sort of thing. Okay, so so you guys can also, if you think on it and you have additional ideas, please do follow up. I'm just going to go through the discussion questions that I have, and then I'd like to talk about the priorities. So my next question is in terms of, it's mostly a who question. So who would take the lead in developing that welcome packet and doing the development of the flyer for the newsletter website and listserv? Now, I think I started this whole presentation saying that we need to figure out a way to kind of work collaboratively. Staff has very limited amounts of time. So I guess the question is really for those of you that are here and those of you that are aware of all the stuff and things that are happening at your neighborhood association level, is there any capacity to work with us in developing this content, or are you pretty much maxed out? It's just a question. I want to be able to manage our expectations here. So so I'm just throwing it out. What are your thoughts?
Couldn't in terms of collaboratively, I guess if there was availability with each of the associations that, each one kind of, takes a little piece of it to put it together,
Yeah, I guess what I'm wondering is, at your neighborhood association, do you already have some sort of outreach that you're doing to people that move into the neighborhood and are new neighbors? Do you do any, Claudia shaking her head? Has that ever been an interest? Because this could be something we could build on top of something you're already doing. Each neighborhood, like downtown is very different from Gady Hill and Court Chemeketa. Anyway.
So in Gady Hill, when we have a neighborhood listserv, for example, so if there was a welcome packet flyer developed, then everyone who moves into the neighborhood has the option of being added to that listserv, and so it would be very easy to welcome that neighbor and then share that packet or flyer.
Is it through Nextdoor, or is it a different, it's its own?
Yeah. But it can also be shared through Nextdoor as well.
Does Court Chemeketa have something like that? Michael, does Can Do have something like that?
No, we don't. And I have to say, we have a very limited, I call it organizational capacity. So much of the historic landmark questions, code questions, have to do with downtown buildings.
Right.
And there's so many sort of layers of notice and organization there. That's not to say, however, that we would not want to participate if it turns out that a group of neighborhood association folks want to work together. I think that makes a lot of sense, frankly. But we don't have anything like that now. There's so many, and I'm not going to start down the road of whining here, but there's so many different groups in the city anyway, in our area, the Downtown Advisory Board, for example, and other groups that have so many overlapping functions that it's in fact been difficult for us to identify a lane, if you will, to pursue. But I do think this is an important thing to be doing, particularly the uniformity of message. Mm-hmm. And I think we can all benefit from participating like that. And it seems to me that the neighborhood association group probably may be the best obvious resource for doing this. There may be others, but that seems to be a good one to me.
Steve, did you have a comment?
Yes, I think that the neighborhood association is a great place for that initial outreach, but the flyer, the insert, for two reasons: to be, a united message from citywide, but also on city letterhead. If it has anything to do with regulatory issues, it seems like it would be better received and more appropriate to, if there's any enforcement or hint of enforcement, that it be city-based and not a neighborhood group-based.
Great, that's helpful. Mm-hmm. So just so I can repeat back what I think I'm hearing, so that the city staff would take the lead in developing the flyer, the FAQ, if you will, for about design review, but that it could be distributed through the neighborhood association. It sounds like Gady Hill definitely has a listserv. I think that Court Chemeketa does as well. Juliana, do you know?
Oh, we're within the NIN group, so I think that NIN, I recall that NIN has a little card, a little flyer that has links to the website, so that you can go there and see what the what's going on, what the meeting minutes are, and just be quiet. So I think that a simple flyer with web links and then more information at those sites, it would be appropriate. And this is the kind of thing that could be cross-referenced with all of the neighborhood associations, because they're all quasi governmental groups anyway.
Right, yeah. And maybe I'm jumping ahead here, but perhaps you know, that we could work with Irma too, because I know Irma helps provide support to the neighborhood associations, especially those that don't have a whole lot of capacity. So and there is I believe there's a city webpage. We'll have to figure out where it all will live. But yes, so what I'm hearing is a single message that the city will develop it, but that we will figure out a way to work with the neighborhood associations to distribute it. That's really helpful. Okay.
I think there should definitely be like a virtual component. Like, I mean, as you're talking about links and things like that, I mean, just me, and maybe it's me just being lazy, but like I get all sorts of stuff in my mail. But, you know, if it comes through in my email and it's got links, I'm going to be more likely to click on it to go find out more versus like, hey, I think I saw, you know, a card, you know, with a bunch of, with this information on it. So I think that there should be like a virtual component.
And that's helpful, Jennifer. Yeah, because it's also cost less.
Yes, it also costs less too. So, you know,
Right. I like that.
And I also think you could, if you didn't want to call it an FAQ or something, you could call it a fact sheet, maybe. I don't know.
Well, so one of the things, and I can't remember if I ever clearly stated this, but part of our requirements from the state is that once a year, we're required to send via mail to all historic property owners. And we do it through our newsletter, right, Zach? I forgot, we need to talk about that. We notify and basically describe their obligations and also benefits for listings. So we do it through mail. We're required to demonstrate that we've done that via mail. And so one of our challenges, especially downtown, Michael, is the high number of tenants. And so we will notify typically like the property owner who's not in town. And so one of the changes to our land use notification, which I believe it was a few years ago now, we've been doing it for a while, is that we notify not just owners, but we also notify tenants. So it does get expensive though with mailing that much. Zach will tell you whenever we have to do a notice or a decision that it's downtown, it's usually a pretty big mailing. But I feel like, again, I don't think we can just do one thing. So once a year we would do a mail. I don't know that we would, I'm going to probably redraft that and we can talk a little bit more about what the welcome packet might look like. If no one's doing that now, as part of a welcome to the neighborhood, but you're doing this kind of listserv, we might craft it just as that FAQ with links, digitally. So maybe reword that. All right, I want to keep moving because we have just an hour. So the last question I had is related really to specific areas of concern in education. So, I mean, we've been talking a lot about notification and being just aware of being designated. I'm just wondering what you guys are experiencing, what you're perceiving in your neighborhoods as issues. I know Juliana in Court Chemeketa, safety and security has been an issue. I was sorry to hear about what happened. Yeah, what happened at your property. I'm going to turn it over to you guys. If there's a specific area that you've been dealing with, that we need to address in terms of education. Like, for example, when I say safety and security, what I mean is, do we need to provide clear guidance to property owners about what alterations they can make to improve the safety and security of their historic property? That's the context. So turning it over to you, Jennifer.
I I don't live in any of these neighborhoods.
Or to facilitate the discussion.
Oh, I know. Yeah, anybody have any discussion about that? I mean, obviously, it seems like with more people putting more cameras and things like that, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
Juliana.
Yeah, I I think cameras are an issue, but the cameras are so small now that I don't think that they're necessarily a design or alteration issue, because they can be mounted on trees, on
right,
garages, up under an eave. I mean, they can be very inconspicuous. Lighting is a little more problematic. My husband has just has changed the lighting on our garage so that now it illuminates the alleyway, but I've noticed that he didn't use a cutoff type light fixture, so it has a lot of night sky issues. It can disrupt a neighborhood to have bright lights like that. So I'll be replacing that with some cutoff fixtures that direct light onto the alleyway instead of just out across the area. Fencing is an issue also, and the fact that installing fencing requires a trip to the Landmarks Commission.
Yep.
Or design review in some of these districts. So on top of the cost of your fencing, there's the cost and time to go for review, and what kind of fencing is appropriate and permitted, and the guidelines tell you, but many homeowners don't understand that they can just go to the ordinance and read what it is what kinds of materials may be used. So that's.
And a lot of times at the commission, they've come to us we've had some that have come retroactively, because if you had an immediate safety concern or something, obviously you'd want to act on it fairly quickly. So, I know that we've had issues with that before, more of a retroactive approval versus, a proactive one.
Another one that's not really safety and security related is adding dwelling units. And this was something that came up in our area where a new resident, new owner did a conversion of a garage space, of kind of a storage workroom space next to a garage into a dwelling unit, and it didn't go through a process to do that, but did not actually make external changes to the building, so that it didn't. If you didn't know it was going on, you wouldn't have seen an alteration that would trigger anything. So with changes to, for adding units, doing a granny unit inside a house, carving out space that way, or converting space, I think we'll see more of that in the future.
Michael, or
I think Steve's hand was up first.
Thank you. I just had a thought. I'm trying to understand how the majority of the reporting is how we find out about things. A neighborhood association mentions it to the committee, and we investigate, or investigation happens. It's hard to know what goes on in the neighborhoods. I mean, just as you just stated, some things are happening and the exterior never changes. So if we have a city enforcement, which is overwhelmed with work and their other duties, the reporting or self-reporting, if you will, most of the neighborhood committees, associations, seems like the real tool that we have to canvass the neighborhoods. Has that been the history? Has it changed much in the last 5-10 years? Or are we being better at that? Or is, if improvement is happening, then we could hope that it would continue. But if it's status quo and we're really not seeing any more, reports of out of compliance projects, then I think really, a harder look needs to take place. Just a question.
That's a good question, Stephen. And I think that on the next two goals, we're going to get more deep into that and what we can do to improve the situation. I think that, I've been here since 2009, and I've seen a significant improvement from when I arrived. But, we're still a small staff, and I think Suzanne can speak to how things are going for compliance. I feel like they're always super busy and there's never enough time. And I think that that's why, in my mind, this partnership with the neighborhood association, where we can figure out clear priorities and identify clear things that we can do together, I think that will just make it better. But I think, for now, right now, I think it's narrowing down. Okay, what do we need to focus on first? Because we can't do everything, and then prioritizing our list here. So,
If you want me to jump in on that real quick.
Yeah. Yes.
Our division is complaint-based only because we have 9 officers, and one of them is a park ranger. And one of them is a multifamily inspector. So that leaves us with the 7 that have to do everything else in the whole city. So unless we get a complaint, we are not out looking for things like this. And we do very frequently respond to work without permits. And if we see that it's historic, we get in the loop with Kimberly. But somebody has to be finding these and bringing them on to us, because there's just no way we could drive down any street and actually make it all the way down the street without having to stop 10 times for some sort of violation.
Yeah.
I imagine. Yeah.
And that brings up a good point. I think that our current adopted historic compliance goals are that city staff will proactively go to all the historic properties twice a year to know whether there's any changes, and we just we've not been able to do it. So
Michael, did you want to still say something?
Yes, thank you. Just an organizational observation about this number 3. That priorities for education, I think, and all of this should concern not only the substance of what's being communicated, but how effectively it's done. And I was thinking that in a almost a triage sort of way, that initially, I think what the presentations ought to be, or the packets, or however it's communicated, what does it mean to have an historic property, and what are the benefits to the property owner, what are the benefits to the city, and what are the burdens, potential or that go into effect right away. And then so that it's not jumping into the weeds quite so quickly, and that folks can determine as they go through this exactly where they want to enter this education information piece, and to have ways for them to get to resources at each stage. For example, the safety and security question, I think it would come to be a surprise to many people to learn that these security measures, cameras, lights, things like that, also have to be integrated with the historic design of the building. And so although there might not be that many people who are doing it, it seems to me that's an obvious place that people would not think about the application of the code. We just had a request for comments from Zach recently about the installation of, I think, can't remember whether it was a lights or security camera in one of the alleys in the downtown historic buildings. Mm-hmm. And you look at those photographs, and I just to make a comparison to housing, you wouldn't even think from looking at the photographs that there would be any problem with that. But the code does apply to it. So anyway, what my point is to start out in a way that introduces folks just what does it mean to have a historic building, what are the benefits, what are the burdens, and then to go from there down to more and more and more details. And once you get to a certain point of detail, then it would be so case specific that it would require the person to go to some other specific resource. But I just think the organization of it, to me, is as important, if not more important, than what it is that's the content.
Thank you, Michael. That's very helpful. And I think, Suzanne, we were in that same meeting. I think we're also looking at, again, redoing our city website to help it be a bit more intuitive, I think. And so this kind of feedback is really helpful, I think. We do have all of this information on our website currently, but even I can't find it easily. So I know that's a goal. And I don't know, Suzanne, if you know the timeline. I don't know when those changes are going to happen, but
I don't know the timeline. I actually haven't even been able to review that information since we got it, but yeah, it was, we had to have some other person from another department find stuff we were looking for because we don't know where it's at.
Yeah, not good.
Yeah, my understanding though is that it's not going to be that long. So I'm thinking springtime probably will be kind of upcoming, and we're some of the people that are going to be in that first. So
fantastic. So very good. Good, timely comment, Michael. All right, the last thing I would like to do on this page with this goal, and Jennifer, I'm going to ask you to facilitate this. I would appreciate it if each person that's here could just identify which one thing you see as the number one priority under this goal. And I'm going to be annoying, and once we draft these updated goals with priorities, we're going to have Zach send out a survey, and you can change your mind. But just for now, for organizational purposes, it would help for staff to get feedback on what your number one priority is under this goal. So of the A, B, C, D. So Jennifer, if you can get things going, does that make sense?
Yeah.
I know there's a way to do a poll, but I don't know.
Here, I'm like, I'll take notes. Okay. I guess I'll just go through my camera. Steve, which is your priority?
I think C, D, and then I would just go A and B.
Okay, who's next? Juliana.
I would say B would be my first priority, then C, D, and A.
Okay. Michael.
Those are mine. Those are just what Juliana said.
Okay. Marianne.
I think that D is pretty good already, that the realtors are talking to people. So probably B, C, A, D.
Claudia.
Well, you know, it strikes me that A, B, and C are really the same thing. Mm-hmm. That you don't necessarily need a welcome packet. I understand that in terms of new property owners, but what you want in that packet is essentially what B and C would have in it. So it seems like you could just do one information piece that covers those three items. And then D, and remember we talked about also adding information or education for contractors. that you could do another fairly simple piece aimed at those professionals in the community, real estate agents, contractors, painters, to provide them basic information on what being in a historic district or working in a historic district actually means, and really just have two different relatively simple pieces of information. Because this makes it look like a lot of work, but what you would do in A is really just tell them what's in B and C.
Right. I agree totally with that, actually. Kendra.
Don't make this complicated.
Yeah, I agree with Claudia. I think B and C could be kind of two sides of a single flyer. And so then the other two are, so B and C, I'd prioritize the deliverable and then figure out how to disseminate it.
Joan. Oh, you're muted.
Yes, I was trying to unmute. This is a really hard one. I think I like education, which is D, and I'm assuming that's going to encompass everybody with education, like, well, with A and B. But I really believe that C is necessary. I mean, having something written down, what happens to that paper? I don't know. And I just know from people who own rental properties in the Court-Chemeketa Historic District, they don't really care about historic. All they care about is getting the money. So anyway, that's me.
Did I get through everybody? I think I did. So it seems that, kind of combining them, combining the goals together to have it, it be like of an umbrella of a, with one that's focused towards, professionals such as like real estate, realtors and contractors and things like that. And then, one that's also for owners and owners and tenants. I have the component of like the home living and then the component of the selling and fixing aspect of it. And then obviously, like, we'd be developing a fact sheet or, that could basically be virtual as well as, a paper version as well that could go out, or we can have a link on when the city website gets updated too, a link there as well.
This is really, really helpful. So I can just repeat back what I think I'm hearing. Generally, the consensus is the priority should be development of a flyer, but to make it more simple and direct, like a two-sided, one side describing when historic design review is required, one other side describing the benefits. So kind of like what Michael was talking about, where you've got just a high level, this is what it means when you're designated historic, which honestly, maybe what I'll do in anticipation of our December meeting is that I will share what we already do in our annual mailing, and so you can get a sense of what that is, which is short and sweet. And then the other audience is really capturing and notifying those that are thinking about buying, so they know what it means. So it's basically, and that's where you need to partner with real estate agents and contractors and those folks. So you've got two groups, people that are new and people that are existing, and sharing the same information, and then being able to figure out a way to disseminate and share additional information when they need it. So that's really the different layers. So thank you. That's very, very helpful. So given that we're running, I'm going to try and go a little more quickly. So this one, next goal is about monitoring historic properties. So this is the one that is an existing goal that staff isn't able to do on their own. And so what we've talked about before, previously, we've got the different strategies here, ABC. So A would be coordinating with representatives of the neighborhood associations and heritage neighborhoods. And then also coordinating with cities enforcement division to align existing historic compliance efforts, which as Suzanne described is complaint driven. And then the last one was the dream, the goal of doing a baseline photo of existing resources for each historic neighborhood and working with neighborhood volunteers to work with staff. So again, I have discussion items, and my question for the group is whether or not you would envision city staff coming regularly to a neighborhood association meeting, if you see that as useful, like once a quarter, just to say, hey, this is what we're doing some kind of check-in that way, whether that would be helpful. So Jennifer, turning it over to facilitate that discussion.
For those that live in the neighborhood, what, I mean, is that helpful for, I mean, I would think it is. And I also would think in a way to help, with that too, is that's part of like the land, like the commission, outreach as well. So like,
oh yeah. So if we could send Steve.
So that, like somebody, goes to one, and like once a quarter or something. Anybody? I mean, I think it's good. I mean, I would think it would, being on the commission, that it'd be good to go out to the neighborhoods a little bit more, because not everybody on the commission always lives in them. And, and it familiarizes yourself with the area, with all the different areas as well.
I think that's a really good idea. It connects the commissioners. Staff has plenty to do and they have to get paid overtime. But, one of the concerns I've had about neighborhood associations for a long time, and I actually chaired SCAN for a couple of years, was on the board for almost 10, I guess, is that the neighborhood associations now really only have a handful of people who regularly attend. And a lot of that has to do with the demographics of our neighborhoods now. Younger people would probably like to be engaged, but they're two working parents with kids. It just very unusual for younger people to go, very unusual for others in our community who are not white and relatively affluent, except for certain neighborhoods. So, I think we need to do or be more creative about how we reach out to the majority of our neighborhoods, because they're not coming to the meetings.
That's a good point. And I know Eunice Kim, who's our long range planner, has been facilitating the update of our comprehensive plan, has had to get quite creative in engaging the community. Mm-hmm. So may reach out to her for any tips and tricks she might have. And certainly COVID hasn't made it easier for the in-person.
Yes, maybe much worse.
Yeah. Anybody else have any thoughts? Oh, Steve. As the commission person on the commission.
So I agree with that. I've attended a number of neighborhood meetings, and it's the same few people all the time. And to that end, the COVID has, kickstarted us all into a digital acceleration mode there. The one benefit is that for city staff, they are overwhelmed in trying to make meetings in the evening. It just adds to their plate. But I think the benefit is that we could do outreach, through Zoom meetings and continue that, even into the future. I don't know when it will end, and we're more comfortable with in-person meetings, but it does make it more convenient. It makes it more accessible, and it's a way to share the information and provide a face to, the commission, if you will, or, the city. So it does have its downside, but it also allows for, much more a farther reach with less effort, on people's part. So I think that's a good thing about the Zoom meetings. The other thing I had another thought. The complaint process, does that work much like the graffiti line, or you can report graffiti through the city website?
Yeah, and maybe Suzanne or Stephanie can speak to this, but I'll just give a brief overview as I understand it, is that there's a method to report complaints online, and historic is right in there. And we have an little flyer, an FAQ, that if someone emails me and has a complaint about historic, I just redirect them to the website. And so that's kind of how the complaints are filed. And then the enforcement division takes it from there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, there's a portal that you can get on, and it'll also update you about your case and when an officer's gone out. There, you can also always call the office and file directly that way.
Did anybody have any comments on, Kendra had a really good suggestion about developing a recorded PowerPoint presentation of the Toolbox Blight to Bright programs, the processes and deadlines to be posted on the HLC website, and then have the link in that fact sheet, which would also be a good thing to have the commissioners do, is that each person has a role in that, in that video, because I think that also, again, would then put at least, a face, other than Kimberly's, or Zach's with the Landmarks Commission. I don't know. I guess I'm saying this as a former commissioner that, I probably would have been like, oh yeah, that'd be great. But, and then also the reminder of the annual, the Global Day of Service.
Right, that's
really
great.
in it too.
That's great. So I'm gonna skip ahead just because I'm looking at the time, and I don't think we have time to discuss all of these in great detail. And we are gonna follow up with a follow-up survey to prioritize these. I will update the strategies under goal 1, but I just wanna skip ahead to the last goal so we have time to discuss it briefly and then talk about our last steps. Oops. I have the chat up. Hello. So the last one is about developing consequences, and we've talked about this before. So A, B, and C. A is the consequences, double permit fees, and other fines. We currently have in our adopted policy our procedure for using 30 days to work with the owner. So that's historic preservation staff to try to gain voluntary compliance, and then it's turned over to the enforcement division for them to take it from there. And then last, I think we had some good discussion last time about if an owner has intentionally violated the historic code, they're not eligible for any local financial incentives like our toolbox grant. So I just, I'm gonna skip to the second question. I'm wondering if you guys have any other input or ideas for additional consequences that you wanted to add at this time.
Unmute myself. Any thoughts? I'm trying to think back. I just rewatched the video this morning. Oh, Steve.
So just trying to understand the double permit fees and fines. Is that applied when someone intentionally violates, or if someone inadvertently violates, do they get the double fees as well?
It's actually both right now. So yeah, we just had a property owner, for example, a downtown property owner, the one I think I sent Stephanie and Suzanne some info on that, where they built an addition on the back, is a downtown commercial. And the gentleman called me and he said, oh, I forgot. I know I'm supposed to do it. I just forgot. But I had to notify him that, well, that's fine. We'll go through the retroactive process, but your fees are going to be more than they normally would have. So
Okay.
there's
And
no.
I think that's one of the issue. I mean, one of the issues is that when you're talking about the, like the intentional versus, is this like the whole, like, they know that we will go back retroactively, and stuff. And so there's like that knowing, that part that would happen. So then, like the precedent, I guess I'm thinking of.
It's a tricky one. I'm trying to think that, what impacts most, people, I guess, is if there's a one-time fee for a mistake, or if there's somewhere long-term where, there's that would be, a thing very difficult to implement, but, it's almost better to take the one-time hit if you're going to violate something and move on with your project, I guess, from one aspect, but difficult to find something that has enough weight that it would be a real deterrent.
Juliana, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I was just going to weigh in and say that I don't think that that the neighborhood associations need to be getting involved in the compliance phase. And
oh, thank you. That's helpful. Yeah.
I think that's overly complicating it.
Sure, that's helpful. Thank you.
Anybody else have a comment?
I do just want to point out that while for the most part, as Jennifer and Steve would attest, the Landmarks Commission is, even if someone does violate, they typically will approve it retroactively, but that is not always, it is within their power to say no. Like they could choose to not approve work that's been already done and then require them to take it down or change it. I think I can think of at least one example in the Court Chemeketa district. This was 4 or 5 years ago, where maybe you all remember, it was a garage and the owner made some alterations that made it look like a Western storefront.
I totally remember that.
You remember that? Yeah.
I totally did, because
like,
because I went on a search during my lunch for that house. I was like, I'm nearby, I'm going to go for a drive-by. But yeah,
Right,
I do remember that. It made it look like it was like a Western barn, the faux facade, kind of wooden front thing.
Yeah.
So and we did make them take it down. And I mean, not to say that, we haven't made them take things down, but, we definitely have, said many times that, we give a little comment of, like, well, you shouldn't be doing this,
Yeah. But the Landmarks Commission could choose, to be a little bit more strict. So I want to be sensitive to everyone's time, because a lot of you are taking your lunch hour. So I'm going to jump now to just where we're at, and then talk about what's next. So our final action, and we're getting closer, so thank you again for your time, is that we'll come up with our final list of goals and strategies that will then be brought back to Landmarks Commission to report and finalize, and then it'll end up with our HLC staff to implement. So that will be ideally at the end of the year, and we have one more meeting on December 14th. But between now and then, please look for, I'm going to stop sharing, a follow-up email from Zach, which will have a short and sweet survey just to prioritize, and you'll have an opportunity to add any other additional comments. And please feel free, if you have any other thoughts, you can share them with the group or just send them to staff. And I did have a follow-up question, I think, is it Kendra? Do you remember what day that Global Day of Service is? I know I should look it up, but I know you talked about it last time. Right?
She left, but
Did she leave?
It was like, it was something around Like Martin Luther King Day,
I can
maybe?
just look it up. Okay.
Yeah, Willamette does two now. So they do the Martin Luther King Day one,
Yes.
and then they also do another one in like April.
Great, great, great.
Yeah, I personally know the director of that program.
Oh, Zach, your wealth of information. Fantastic. Okay, great. Does anyone else have any other questions or want to add anything else before we end? Because it is 1 o'clock. Well, thank you again. I appreciate taking your time. I'm glad that those of you that are here have power. Yay. So keep safe and warm and dry. And since I won't see you again until, have a good like Halloween and Thanksgiving. And we'll see you in December. Thank you. Bye.